listening to Jai Long, and this is Make Your Break. Whether you're a big-hearted creative or an aspiring entrepreneur, let's take action on your dreams, reconnecting you with your why and giving you the how. I'm here to dish out actionable mindset tips and fun industry secrets to help you blow up your biz. From eye-opening reality checks to motivational gold, no two episodes are ever the same. So tune in weekly, skip the FOMO, and let's dive into the deep together. Hey, Make Your Breakers, it's Jai Long here. I hope you're well. Today I'm talking to Carolina Guzik. If you don't know who she is, she's been on the podcast before, and she talked about Pinterest. She gave some great strategies. It's one of the most downloaded episodes to date, and people are still writing to me all the time about it. Today, she's talking a little bit about Pinterest, but more so, she is a speaker at the next Wedding Photography Summit that's coming up, which is a big deal. We love to get top speakers from all over the world that teach actionable strategies that people can implement instantly into their business so they can get some more leads, and that's what this is all about. Now, if you don't know what the Wedding Photography Summit is, it is the biggest workshop in the world for wedding photographers. It goes over 2 days, it's online, and over the last 3 years, we've had 22,000 attendees, and we've had some of the biggest speakers in the world, including people like Gary Vee and India Earl and a whole list of people, Donald Miller, etc. So this year, we're actually talking, and we're going to go deep in SEO, in pricing. I'm actually teaching the pricing module. I'm going to teach how to increase your prices without losing a single client. We're going to talk about videography, web design, copywriting, client experience, and we're going to do a live shoot, which is really fun because myself and Lilu, my wife, are actually the couple in the shoot. We're in the south of Spain, and I'm uncomfortable in front of the camera, so you get to watch me being awkward. I'm going to be very awkward about it. But today we're talking to Carolina about Pinterest and how she made her break, because, you know, often you see these successful photographers and successful people in this space, and it's hard to imagine what it was like for them when they had 0 followers, 0 money in the bank, 0 business, 0 clients, no website and everything else. And sometimes we just need to see that someone else has done it, to get that motivation for ourselves and inspiration, and also how did they do it? What little strategies can they share, and what little clues do they leave behind from how they built their success? So I want you to look out for that, because there's a few things that she says in this interview that you can implement in your business, and it might give you just a little mindset shift, things like that. And maybe just like a little strategy that you never heard before or you've never tried before. And maybe it's time to try something different in your business to see what's going to work for your business. So if you do want to go over and get yourself a ticket to the Wedding Photography Summit, tickets are $7 for the 2-day experience, or it's $97 for the VIP experience, which gives you 12-month replay. It gives you my TikTok ads masterclass, my Facebook ads masterclass, plus my best performing Facebook ads to date. I'm going to give that to you as a plug and play. You can literally steal it off me, plug it in. I'll give you the sales page breakdown of what works the best as well. So for $97, I mean, if you just got that, like, that's worth it in itself. Not to mention the coaching call, the panel discussion, everything else that you're going to get. Just head over to weddingphotographysummit.com. All the details are there, but I'll get in quick because it's happening really fast, and I want you to have the best experience possible. So get over there, get your ticket, and let's make it happen. So let's get into today's episode. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Carolina, we've actually had you on the podcast once or twice before, and I'm excited to have you back. I know you got a podcast yourself. Are you still recording and releasing episodes all the time on your podcast?
I am, every Tuesday morning.
Every Tuesday morning, the Tog Republic, all about marketing and everything else to do with business when it comes to wedding photography and photography in general. Is that right?
Absolutely correct. And we also have once a month an episode in Spanish.
Awesome. Okay, so if you guys don't know who Carolina is, I've done an episode before. You can go onto my website and actually just search her name, and you'll be able to find the past episode. And she dives in deep and talk about Pinterest on that last episode. So we have lots of strategies. It was a really good and hugely popular episode. People are still writing to me saying they're getting so much from that episode, all those good strategies, and it just seems so simple as well. But today I actually wanted to talk to you and more so like who you are and how you made your break. And one reason is because when I first started this podcast, I really wanted to be inspired by all the people around the world that have created their own break and they've made their mark in the world, whatever it is, how big, how small, it doesn't matter. Because it inspires so many of us to do the same. And everyone's a different level. And we all need to hear from someone just like us of like, yes, they went out there, they took a risk, they made things happen. So let's dive into that today.
So I started, I believe, over 12 years ago. It was a hobby, I guess, like many other people. My family growing up, like we didn't take photos. Like I have very little history with photos from my family. And I think that always kind of like bothered me a little bit. Like I want more photos of my childhood.
That's so interesting.
I used to, yes. I think it was, the 80s, cameras with rolls. Probably my family took photos and the rolls never got developed or what have you. But I don't remember my family having like a photography inspiration kind of a thing. So anyway, when I get married, I used to complain to my husband a lot about that. I'm like, I don't have any photos of my childhood. And he's like, well, there's nothing we can do about that, but we can, take photos now. You can take photos of your life now. Because obviously there was like the complaint of not having photos, but also there was not like, oh, but now I take all these photos, right? It was just like, I'm not taking photos at all. So he got me a camera and I started taking photos of my family, my friends, every single birthday party, nothing artistically, just literally just having a camera, point at people, say cheese, and just creating tons of like albums online for people to see. And at the time, I didn't even know that could be a business. I grew up in Colombia, so it's not like I knew, like in Colombia, this thing of like in the United States that people go to like Sears to take like the annual family photo, things like that. That culture doesn't exist in Colombia. Like in Colombia, people don't go to get a family portrait ticket.
Totally.
So in Colombia, like I didn't grow up with that. So like I didn't know that was possible. I thought that photographers were either photojournalists working for newspapers or wedding photographers. I didn't know there was any other genre of photographers.
That's cool.
So like I got my camera and then my friends were like, oh, take my photo. And then
so this was in the United States?
Yes, this was in the United States. Like I was already living here. So, but it's still like I in my mind, like I was like, what do you mean take a family photo where everybody like wears like nice clothes and we go to a park? Like this makes no sense. What are we doing here? So a friend of mine sent me a website. She was like, look, she is a photographer and she does family photos. And I was so confused by the whole thing. I'm like, I don't get it. What do you mean that people would pay for this? And again, this comes from my family never having photos and culturally not something that Colombians do, right? We don't go take family photos. Anyways, I saw that and I'm like, oh, this seems interesting. I'm going to try it. I had a business. I mean, not a business. I had a job already. I had gone to school for marketing and advertising. I was working in an ad agency. I had really nothing to lose. So I started a business and people started to hire me. And I thought it was really weird. But I'm like, hey, this is fun. It's kind of like my hobby. And now people are paying for my services. And I guess because I didn't have any expectations and I knew very little about the actual business of photography. And I was lucky enough to see a website that was like, she was like a famous photographer in Chicago, this first website that I ever saw. And she was charging what I thought at the time was a lot of money for photography that I just kind of like copy her. Like I have nothing to lose because I have my job. So like if somebody hire me, great. And if I don't get hired, it's a hobby. But people start paying me and I'm like, this is crazy. And then I took it a little bit more serious. And then I was like, oh, I need to learn this. And that's pretty much how I got started.
So when you said you need to learn this, like by that stage, you had the photography dialed in, but were you sort of like curious about like the business side of things? Like, oh, so how do I properly invoice? How do I turn this into an actual business?
Correct. And I also wanted to learn more about like photography itself. Like I was taking very safe photos, like a family, stand here, everybody look at the camera. I knew very little about the potential that this family photography could be about. So I started seeing what other photographers were doing. I started doing like my own research. I was like, okay, how could I implement my personality into this business? How could I make it fun? And obviously, yes, how do I invoice? How this thing works? Do I need a license? Where do I go? Do I need to start like an actual business? Should I just like do it kind of like a side hustle without any responsibilities attached to it? But I am also very type A. So I need things to be very structured. So I was like, this cannot be a hobby. Like this needs to become, I need to go all in kind of a thing. So I started working more. I still had my 9 to 5 job. So I was like, okay, this is a safe space. And I started attending like photography groups, and I started hanging out with people that were into photography, and all of them were like wedding photographers. None of them were like family photographers. And in my mind, I always thought like, oh, wedding photography is like such a stiff job. It's like, again, from the 80s and 90s.
I think a lot of people felt like that.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not interested in this. I don't want to work the weekends either. But I saw they were making obviously more money with it, right? So I was like, okay, but how do I make more money if I don't want to do that job? Anyways, long story short, I ended up becoming a second photographer for a well-known photographer here in my city just by dumb luck. And I saw he was, at the time, this was over 10 years ago, he was a trailblazer in the industry. Like he was doing things completely different. He was working these weddings that they were like huge, amazing weddings. And he was really generous with his time and with his knowledge. And I think that because I saw how he was working, that I saw a lot of potential. And I'm like, this is something that perhaps I would like to one day pursue. But I was fine with my family photography business. And then the sisters of the siblings of those families were like getting married, and I had already a relationship with the family. So they're like, oh, could you be my wedding photographer? And that's how one thing led to the other.
There's a lot of things in there that we could unpack as well. But was there one specific moment that you sort of looked back and you felt like it made your break? Like it was like one person that contacted you to shoot their wedding for the first time, or the first time someone actually offered to pay you, or like, was there a light bulb moment when the first time you looked at someone else that was doing it or something like that?
I mean, there is obviously like very, very, moments when I was like, oh, I made it, right? Like the first time that somebody paid me for a family photography, I was like, unbelievable. Never in my life thought that this will be possible, right?
I've made it.
Exactly. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Absolutely can do this. The first time that my first wedding alone, which this story is crazy. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, this was so insane. It was a destination wedding. We just did a handshake.
Where was it?
Was in Cartagena, Colombia, which is super posh for weddings.
Yeah.
There was no contract. It was pretty much like we met, we shake, and we're like, great, see you in 6 months in Cartagena. And that was it. And now when I look back at that, I'm like, oh my God, that is insane. How did I do that? And obviously before the wedding, like I got really nervous and I was like, I don't think that I can do this. So I called the bride. And I was like, I think, I can see me on my back. I'm getting a little bit anxious. I don't think that I should be doing this. And she was like, no, I'll see you at my wedding. And if you don't show up, I know where you live. So I'll see you at my wedding pretty much.
So she's sort of calming you down.
Yes, it was pretty much, she was like, you're going to do this. And that's it. There is no talking about this.
No options. Yeah.
Yeah, no options. You have to show up.
That's good.
So I showed up with my equipment, with a handshake. And obviously when I came back, I was like super stressed about the photos because this was my very first wedding. I'm like, I don't know if this is good or not. But she loved it. And that was it. That gave me a little bit of courage. So that was another moment that I'm like, oh my God, I made it. I did my first destination wedding, my first actual wedding ever. And they're happy with the results.
So your first ever wedding, did you go second shoot for someone else before that? Or did you just go straight to a wedding by yourself?
I had assisted, not even second shoot weddings before. So like I was carrying equipment, holding lights, handling cameras. Then I had that wedding. And after that wedding, I was like, this is insane. And I need to actually do this like with a professional, like somebody needs to guide me because yes, this didn't work out one time, but I think this was just like luck. I need to make sure that this is going to be good. So I started second shooting. And after that, after I second shot several weddings, then I started, taking my own weddings. Yeah. Correct.
And I guess like after you shot your first wedding, you would have looked at weddings differently when you're second shooting because you're kind of trying to learn the craft a lot, yeah?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I think second shooting is a really great experience for, see how other people work and learn without kind of like the responsibility per se. But now, that I'm like established wedding photographer in my city, when I when I hire somebody to second shoot for me, I'm very picky, and it's funny because like somebody gave me an opportunity when I knew nothing, and I am super grateful for that. But now the stakes for me are too high that I cannot take that risk. Like I have to hire somebody that is at
They know what they're
the
doing.
same level. Yes.
Yeah. Like the first wedding that I ever shot was the first time I ever been to a wedding besides my parents' wedding, which was in the lounge room when I was, probably 9 years old or something. So I had no idea on weddings. And so after I shot that wedding, I was a little bit insecure of like, I don't know if I did the right job. What do other photographers do? I've got no idea. So I put it out there and asked if I could do some second shooting. And I got this job with this guy and I was really excited about it. And I went out and shot the wedding with him. And what I learnt most was like, oh my God, I don't want to be like this guy. And so this guy walked around all day just yelling at everybody, at the top of his voice, like, all right, group photo, everyone stand in line. And he'll just be like so aggro and just angry all the time. And so yeah, like at the end, I felt I was embarrassed to be with him because I was helping him carry his stuff and I was shooting stuff, and I could hear all the people walking around go like, "Oh, that photographer is an asshole." And yeah, like really quickly, I was like, "Okay, so whatever I was doing is better than this, so I might just go back to what I was doing." But it's funny, but sometimes you got to work with other people just to see how other people do actually work. And this guy, funny enough, is really busy and everyone recommends him and everything. So he's got his niche market there, people that don't mind angry people at their wedding. But for me, it was like I could never be like that person. And if that's what it takes, then I'm just not the right photographer. And so I just decided I'm just going to be completely different, and I guess that's hard to do as well. Do it your own way.
Absolutely. One of the things that for me, like that I learned at the beginning when I was second shooting, before I found like my mentor, this guy that was doing those crazy weddings, all the photographers that I work for, they were very, don't say anything, don't say your name. You're just here to second shoot. You're not here to interact. Like kind of like that scarcity and that like we're competition. Even if you're here working under my team, we're still competition, which I think it's crazy because obviously I'm there to support them. I'm not there to get business or anything like that. But that was like, this feels weird.
Major scarcity mindset.
Yes. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And then when I work with the guy that I call as my mentor, that he was doing all these crazy, expensive and beautiful weddings, he was so generous with like me. And I was like, I wasn't like a good photographer even. And he hired me and he would like introduce me to like everybody. And he was like the hype man. He would be like, she's so good. You need to, keep your eye on her. She's going to be so great in 2-3 years. Make sure that she's in your radar because you're going to want to work with her. And
that's
that
awesome.
taught me about like generosity within the business and always be positive. And like, for me, it was like, he is not concerned about scarcity. He has no fear.
He's comfortable in himself.
Exactly. Yeah. He's super comfortable. He didn't care. So that taught me a lot. And I'm super grateful for, to see those two polar sides of the coin.
I'm glad that you've seen that. And I'm glad you pointed it out, especially on the podcast, because a lot of people don't see that. And what I've noticed throughout my career, and it's been a long career and I've done a lot in my career, but the people that don't help anyone else up and the people that try and hold the secrets to themselves and try and bring everyone else down, like they're not here anymore, in where I am. But the people that are so generous are always so successful, and it works in line like that. It doesn't matter if you're an educator right now, it doesn't matter if you're a designer, photographer, it doesn't matter if you're a florist, like whoever you are, the people that I know that are at the top of the game are the most generous. And I'll give you some examples, right? Sometimes I'll write to someone. So let's say, for instance, I'll write to Gary V on Instagram. So he's very generous of his time. He gets back to me on DMs and he'll talk to me. And I'm like, that's amazing. Then I'll write to someone that's in my area and maybe they've got 5,000 followers and they never even get back to me. They're not generous with their time at all because they're too popular, they're too famous, they're too busy, they're my competition, like whatever it is. And I always think of those tiny little things. Another example is when I did Jack Short, that documentary, and I'll put it in the show notes if you guys want to watch that documentary. That documentary, I went undercover, and what I noticed from that was the people I reached out to, I started reaching out people with barely any followers, and no one wanted to work with me. and they didn't even give me the time. They didn't help me. They didn't even, most of them didn't even get back to me. Then I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the top. So I started reaching out to the top stylists and people that I actually knew. They didn't know it was me, but the top stylists, the top planners, the top photographers, and all the top wrote back paragraphs of like, here's where to find some work. This is what to do. Let us know if you're in the area. Let us know if you want to get a coffee or whatever it is. And I'm like, here's me with 20 followers, and they are giving me the time of day to be so generous with their time. No wonder you're so successful, you know? And I think about that because now I want to give back to you somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's so important to see that correlation, because with anything that we do, there's always going to be one specific thing that you can see repeated throughout anyone. And so it's like patterns, right? So if I see successful people, I'm like, what is it that they have that the rest of people don't have? And that is one of the things. I'm like, every single successful person I know is insanely generous. And the more generous they are, the more successful they are.
Yeah, good advice.
So continue on with your story. I just want to hear, like, so now you kind of at a point where, like, what do you do next? Do you build a website?
I had a website already. Like I had,
okay.
Because again, I'm very type A and I used to work in marketing and advertising. I knew.
So how did you plan this stuff out though? Like, how did you know, okay, I need a website, I need this, I need that. Like, where did the plan come from?
Okay. So once again, type A, I used to work in an ad agency. So I knew the basics. I'm like, I know if I want to have a business, the minimum that I should have is a website. That is like, I cannot go and pretend, even if this is a hobby. And if I don't have like a brand, that was very embedded in my brain because of the, I went to school for this and then I was working in the environment. So I got my website at the time, like I bought a simple template. So I put something together. And at the time, it wasn't even like social media. This sounds so crazy, but over 12 years ago, like Facebook wasn't a thing. We didn't have Facebook pages. Obviously, no Instagram. No.
What did you scroll? Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, I had my you.
What did your thumb do? Nothing.
Nothing. Our phones were like, no, we didn't have all this technology. It sounds so old, but anyways, this was just only 12 years ago. So, it happened and I was just like sending emails like to my friends. I'm like, hey, check out my website. And if you have somebody that, that wants photos, send them my way. So like really good old marketing, like that was it, like really good old school marketing. And then obviously as the time progressed, I knew that I had to have a newsletter. And again, how do I know this? Because the campaigns that I was working with in my business, all of this was like little things that they were doing for like these companies, right?
That's great that you had that experience and you could bring it into your new business. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the business that I was like working, the teams that I was working in this ad agency, they had like, okay, we need a sales strategy. We need to have a newsletter because we need to send information about the upcoming, events. We need to have a website. So I was like, okay, if that works for a big business, it has to work for my business.
Totally.
So I got my website and I got my newsletter. That was the first thing that I got. So, and again, I start how people subscribe to my newsletter. I would send it to everybody like, hey, I have a newsletter. I'm gonna, at the time, I was like, I'm just gonna give some promotions on my newsletter, sign up, blah, blah, blah. And with time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to create a freebie. And the freebie that I wanted to create, because I wanted it to be something that was useful for anybody, even if they didn't hire me as a photographer, right? I wanted to just give value. So the freebie that I created was like how to take better photos with your phone. That was what, at the beginning when phones were just starting to have cameras. I'm like, oh, this is going to be really good because this is something new. People want to have that. So I create that freebie. And to be honest, I still have that freebie like on my website. Obviously, I have updated kind of like the content, but that is still a freebie on my website. So that's awesome. How those two things started. And obviously,
did you ever book any work? Like, did any of the right clients download that?
Absolutely. So I did an event. Again, I was like, I need to get my name out there. So like I reach out to like a very upscale children's clothing line. And again, at the time I was just a family photographer. And I said, listen, what about if we do something together? And they're like, oh, we actually have this program where we connect with local photographers. We email our huge email list, and then people come to the store and you photograph them and then you sell the photos. We get a commission out of this, but you have access to their emails if they give them to you. I'm like, this is gold. This is going to be so good. And it was really, really good because on a weekend, I photographed like over 100 families. It was like a really quick, like tiny mini sessions.
In, out. Yeah,
exactly. The families bought the images. The majority of the families bought the photos. So I made a really good profit. And I would say that 90% of these families gave me their emails. So I had those emails. I used to email like every 2 months. No, actually, to be honest, I used to email like seasonal. So like summer, winter, whatever. Yeah. And one of my best weddings, like my second destination wedding, came out of this mailing list. So one of the moms that had come here with her baby, her brother-in-law was getting married. They got married in Curacao. And she had only worked with me once at this little event that was like a 5-minute photo shoot, but she really liked my energy and she liked the content that I shared for the next 2 years on that newsletter. So when the time came, she was like, hey, I know this photographer that she's really like, I really like her. We got into a phone call. The couple really liked me. And here I go onto my second destination wedding. This time, obviously much prepared with backup equipment, a contract, a good plan. So I have that wedding.
Can I even just stop you on that? Because I think not enough people realize that like email lists work and they work on so many different ways. And for some reason I knew this, but when I first started, I don't know why, but I built my email list straight away and I did newsletters. But the newsletter, you got to remember, like for wedding photographers, it wasn't because I had repeat customers and I knew people would get back to me. The reason being is because in year 4, year 5, and year 6, all the people that I shot in previous years, I was still on their radar. And I was still updating with the weddings that I was shooting, where I'm shooting, the destinations that I'm traveling to, the albums I'm just launching, like all these things. And they used to love getting my emails. So they'd always refer me to their friends because I was the person front of mind all the time. So I actually booked probably all my last few years just from my email list, just because so many people remembered me and continued to remember me. And then they'd always like forward my email onto one of their friends that were getting married. So it's an amazing strategy that I don't think not many people really think about.
I think it's a strategy that a lot of people avoid because it does take time. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is a little bit of a pain to create, to get that list going and to create good content, because what happens, at least what I see with the majority of newsletters, is just like a sale pitch, right? Yeah, and that might work 1 or 2 times, but if every single email that you send is a sale pitch, it becomes garbage. Exactly. So creating good content that people will open requires a lot of intention and a little bit of research. And I guess that's why people don't enjoy sending newsletters, because this is like a lot of work up front, but once you do it,
Carolina, though, but
it's great.
Don't you think it's true? It's like I work with thousands of photographers, but the people that say like, Jai, like I can't be bothered to like do a newsletter, or I can't be bothered to start a website. I literally have people that go like, I just can't be like, I've been in business for 3 years now, I just can't be bothered starting a website. Like, what I always think is, if you can't be bothered to take action on your business and do these things, like, of course you're going to have diminished returns on your results compared to someone else, because like the person that's showing up and like that puts in the time to does a newsletter and builds a website, builds a freebie, like you said, puts in strategies maybe for Pinterest or SEO, could be showing up on social media. Like the person that actually takes the most action for their business always is going to get the most leads, the most attention, and probably the most sales and make the most money.
Absolutely. I mean, I just think it's kind of like a conundrum, right? Because there's many things that I don't do because I don't enjoy. So I do have to do things in my business that I myself enjoy. Now, do I enjoy writing a newsletter? It's not at the top of my list, but I know the results are going to be really good. So I make an effort. One thing that, for example, I myself don't do because I don't enjoy at all is TikTok. I don't even have a TikTok account. So I'm not going to spend time there if I truly, truly don't enjoy it. However, a newsletter, once I get it going, I know that I will enjoy the results of the newsletter. So like I have to like play a little bit of the mind. It's kind of like going to the gym. Do I love it? No.
Going to the gym.
Do I like to feel mindset. Good? Yes.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast of this guy. He's 60 years old, and he says, every day I run 4 miles. And the guy that was interviewing him goes like, oh, do you just love running? He goes, no, I hate it. And he's like, oh, well, do you love it when you're actually running? No, when I'm running, I want to quit every time. And he's like, well, why do you do it? He's like, well, every day I go for a run and I get to a point where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I should just give up. And then I tell myself, but am I a quitter? Do you really want to live a life like that where you're unhealthy and you're unfit and you're not living to, your full potential? And then he's like, okay, after I have that conversation in my head with myself about that, then I can run all day. Like, I won't stop. And I think so often, like, it's your mental strength more so than anything else. And that's why it's important. That's why successful people, if you look at anything else, I talked about before, like successful people have abundance, that mindset, and they're very giving. But the other thing that they have is they have habits. And so a habit is built because they don't want to go for a run for 4 miles, but they do it, right? They don't want to write the newsletter, but they do it. And they do it over and over and over. And then they don't want to release that podcast episode every Tuesday and once a month in Spanish, but they do it, right? Because it's a habit. And so what we do is like, we have this balancing act between of like, what is it actually what we want to do, which is watch Netflix and eat chocolate on the couch. And what actually should we do, which is probably go for a 4-mile run every day.
Correct. Or you can do both,
And you can do both. Yeah, absolutely.
Manage your schedule. But yeah, I do believe that at some point in your business, you do have to care, right? And you do have to go the extra mile because especially nowadays, like you tell me we're in 2022 and you tell me, hey, you know what? I don't need a website because I have Instagram. I probably gonna give you at least 5 reasons why you need a website. If you're gonna tell me like, hey, I'm putting all my eggs on Instagram because that's what I am. Well, I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why maybe you need to diversify. Do you need to be everywhere? No. But do you need to be at least in like 3 to 4 different places where your audience is going to find you and places that you enjoy being? Then you should, even if it's, extra work. And even if it's sometimes you don't want to do it, but you just have to push to get there.
Yeah, and it's a great point there. Like, I'm not a big believer in diversification where you spread yourself too thin, but especially with marketing, people finding you, it's like the way I see it, it's like planting seeds. And so if you have gardens all over the city, right, it means people are more likely to stumble into your garden and see that thing. So it's so important for us to create lots of revenues that people come in. And sometimes you forget that you even had that blog post or that pin on Pinterest. And then when an inquiry comes in, like, oh my God, I'm glad that I took the time to do that. That's awesome. And then tomorrow's like, oh my God, I'm glad I did that newsletter. I just got another inquiry. And then the next day, I'm glad I drove to that venue. I just got another inquiry from them. And so now you've got all these hooks out and it's so easy to, if you go on fishing, so easy to catch all the fish.
I think that people struggle with this is because they think they need to do all the things with the same intensity. So for example, my Pinterest, right? When I talk about Pinterest, I'm like, you need to do these boards, you need to pin. People is like, but do I need to pin every day? No, you don't. I don't pin every day. At the beginning, when I started my Pinterest, I was pinning every day. Once I build my castle, I can relax, right?
Totally.
Do I blog every single week? Absolutely not. I have found out that I don't need to blog every week. I do blog at least once a month, because I like that consistency.
That's awesome.
Once a month, can do it. Do I need to do... The thing that I do the most is Instagram stories because it's easy. I just turn the camera on me. I can talk about whatever nonsense, do it. Do I send a newsletter every month? No, I stick to my schedule. Seasonal works for me. Maybe I change in a couple of years, but right now, this is what it works for me. So I am in a lot of spaces, but I don't do all the spaces with the same intensity.
And at the same time.
And at the same time, like I pace myself so like I don't stretch myself too thin.
Like I even say this inside the business map. I'm like, if you're going to do blog posts, do it once a week for 12 months and then never do one again. And it doesn't matter. And that's what I did at the start, right? So my blog posts all from like 2013, 2014. I haven't really blogged for years. There's probably 52 blog posts on there because I remember I did that. And I still get inquiries every single day from those blog posts because they're on Pinterest. They all rank. And I'm like, so I go in there and update them. And I'm like, man, that's all I needed to do. I put in the work. The year after, I went and spent time going to all the venues. And the year after, I spent the time growing my Instagram following. The year after, and I just keep working like that.
Exactly. That's, that's the best way to do it. You don't get bored. You don't stretch yourself too thin.
Yeah. Hey, so the Wedding Photography Summit's coming up and you're doing a masterclass on Pinterest. Can you tell me, are you excited about being a speaker this year at the Wedding Photography Summit?
Super excited. Obviously, I can't wait to, meet new people, to, be there. Thanks so much for the opportunity. It's a little bit, nervous, but, it's going to be fun.
On a personal level for yourself, like, what are you most excited about? Like, what are you hoping to gain from this?
I don't know how to answer that question. I think I'm excited about the opportunity, obviously, to connect with people, to show people why Pinterest, it's good for their business. I really want people to be successful. I don't like to go into Facebook groups and see people struggle with things that you can change that could have an impact on your business, right? So I think that I'm interested about that. I'm really interested about what happens after. What kind of connections can I make after this? What kind of people will I meet? Who's going to slide into my DMs and we're going to become friends? I don't know. Like, I'm really excited about that part of the opportunity. What happens next? It is a big opportunity for me, not only to teach, but to connect. And I would like to see if the momentum carries on. I think that will be exciting to see.
Doing anything like this, it's like it's a new door, and then you got to peek through it, and then when you step in, you're in a new room, and you just don't know what's going to happen, and you got to be open to everything. Hey,
correct? Yeah. It's exciting, It's I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm excited,
Well, when you say you're nervous and everything, when you first shot your wedding, you said you were nervous. It was a handshake. You had anxiety. You're not too sure. Is this like another? And then you said there was many pivotal points in your career. Is this just another step where you're getting uncomfortable once again?
Yes, obviously. I mean, I feel different because I'm nervous, but I'm not
confident. Yeah,
exactly. I'm confident. Yeah. I know the strategy works. I have teach hundreds of other photographers. So awesome. I know what I'm doing. It's just like a new environment. So like, it's always a little bit like, even if I'm an extrovert, sometimes I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. But I am very confident on the ability of this to be a strategy that works for everybody that wants to implement it, right? It's going to be a strategy for everybody.
It won't work for everyone else.
Exactly. But I think people that want to, or even people, what I always say is like, you might don't want to do Pinterest, but there is always information in there that is going to help you, for example, with SEO. I know you're also going to have Catalina talking about SEO. So like, this is going to definitely complement her talk about SEO. So there is always something to learn, even if you decide like, hey, this is not for me. Yeah.
So your talk is going to be all about Pinterest. I know that you came in and graced us inside the 6-Figure Business Map and did a masterclass in there. Can you tell us a little bit about what people can expect when they sign up to a $7 summit ticket and then they tune in and then there's you giving us all the knowledge?
This is so affordable. And this is one of the things I wish I had 13 years ago. Because I really
Imagine
had to
start my... Yeah.
It would have taken me 13 years to be where I am.
I know, seriously.
So definitely thank you for putting this platform for people to access information at such a affordable price. Super affordable. So one of the things that I want people to understand is what Pinterest is. I think that even after all these years, I've been teaching about Pinterest, I think for the past 5 years, I believe. And there is always the same kind of like pushback. I don't need another social media platform. So I'm like, okay, this is the first thing that we need to debunk. It is not a social media platform. The second thing that I think it's important to people to understand is how to use it. I think that people think that I just need to post, upload a couple of images and, things will work out. And not really. Like we need it to be intentional, and not only be intentional, but be smart about how we're using the content that we already have. So I'm going to teach you how to use, all the pins in a strategic way to attract people in your market. This is not a global campaign to attract people from all over the world. I want you to understand like what you need to do to attract people in your market. Even if you're a destination photographer, we're going to give a little bit more direction to what a destination wedding photographer means. I want to walk away from the term destination wedding photographer. I want you to tell me exactly where you want to work. So I'm going to teach you all this within the class. I'm going to teach you about keywords. I'm going to teach you about how to use the right description for your boards. I'm going to teach you about how to create boards that actually attract people that are looking for your services. I also want people to understand that this is not a straight strategy, meaning that it's not like you're going to upload some images into Pinterest and immediately you're going to start getting clients. First of all, to be 100% honest, this strategy at the beginning takes a couple of months. And maybe by a couple, I mean about 6 months. And the second thing that I want you to know is that Pinterest is not a linear marketing strategy. There is so many things that happen within Pinterest, but Pinterest can be the starting point for, attracting more clients into your business. Still today, Pinterest is like the second most traffic the first thing for my website is Google.
Traffic generator.
Traffic generator. Google, the second thing is Pinterest. So I know that every month, hundreds of people are looking at my website thanks to Pinterest. And I know those people are local to me. And how do I know this? Because I take a look at my analytics. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do all this for your own business. And the great thing is like the things that I'm going to teach on the summit are applicable right away. Like you can be taking notes and immediately after the summit, make the changes that you need to make.
That's what we want.
Exactly. Like I am very straight to the point because of my personality. I'm not a lot into fluff or small talk, even though I have a podcast, but I like strategies that people can implement right away.
Hey, Carolina, can I actually make a request for the summit?
You can.
Could you show me? I'd just love to see just a little case study from one of your students that's implemented this, because when you say it's been 6 months, I would love just to see from someone that's like 6 months ago, they've implemented some stuff and then how they're feeling now. I think that would be really good for everybody.
I can reach out and see what I can put together.
Yeah, I think that'd be really good for everybody, because sometimes all we need to see is just oh, someone else just like myself has done it. Cool. And so they get the results. Okay, cool. I'm going to go for it. So I think it's so important. And even if it's just just a little case study or just a little testimonial or something, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, testimonials, I have tons.
Yeah. Or it'd be nice to highlight one of your students.
Definitely. Let's see. I had already recording my presentation, but let's see. I'll make it work.
You just whack it in there, yeah. Or you can just give it to me and I can actually literally do it for you. So that's cool because I'm live. So,
There you go. We can, make it work.
Yeah. Hey, so I'm really excited. I know there's going to be thousands of people at this event. I'm always been unrealistic with trying to make this thing as big as possible. And this year is going to be no different. I want to make it as good as possible, as fun as possible. And I'm just genuinely excited this year that there's just going to be so many strategies that people are going to walk away with. I think people's minds are going to be opened up and there's a lot of stuff going to be crammed in and then we'll close it shut. And so, yeah, I'm excited about all that. And to have you there this year is a real honor. So thank you so much for being there.
Well, thank you so much for having me. The honor is mine.
Cool. Where can people find you?
So people can find me on The Talk Republic, togrepublic.com. That's where I have my podcast episodes, any information about Pinterest or any other educational aspects is there. I have a Patreon channel where I try to put content every 2 weeks, and I talk a lot about content creation because, again, Pinterest is content creation. So I talk a lot about content creation, how to get it done, how to repurpose content, because, again, it's about working smarter, not harder here, and all those good things. So people can find all that information on thetalkrepublic.com.
Sweet. Thanks for being on the podcast, and I'll see you very soon.
Thank you for having me.